And that jarring cacophony tells you that you're back with the Power of Three podcast once again, as we continue our look through the worlds of Doctor Who original novels. I'm Kenny Smith. We're still in New Adventures territory today, and we're going to be looking now at Parasite, which was written by Jim Mortimore. It was the 33rd New Adventures novel, published on the 1st of December 1994, just in time for Christmas, with a cover by Paul Campbell. It featured the 7th Doctor Ace and Bernice Summerfield. It was author Jim Mortimer's third of 4 novels for the Virgin New Adventures novel range. And let's have a look at the cover. Here we can see it is the standard New Adventures logo with a pink background to the New Adventures and with the author and book title tag. There's Benny falling through sky wearing an orange top and what looks like a pair of jeans with her hands up going, "Ah!" and she's got hoopty rings on as well. She's being overseen by a strange alien-looking creature with a long snouty-like mouth. Looks like we're going, "Hoo!" with a pair of yellow eyes. It's quite grey and muscly. It's holding on to what looks like a boat, which has been woven. And behind it, it looks like there's a sail of some sort. A strange kind of alien parachute with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 points. Or is it 8? No, it is 8 points. And there's all sorts of strange swirliness in the background. Can't quite tell what it is. There looks like there's a whole stream of alien planets being drawn towards a sort of sun, and there's explosions on the surface of that sun. There we go. That is the front cover. Let's have a look and see what the back cover has to tell us. Change, Benny! It's the most terrifying thing of all! And that's what's happening to you, is it, Doctor? It's what's happening to all of us. The TARDIS has arrived in the Elysium system, lost colony of distant Earth, and site of the artefact, a world turned inside out, a world of horrific secrets. For more than a century, scientists have studied the ecosystem flourishing within the artefact. Now, the system is in collapse, and even the humans trapped inside are changing into something new and strange. With the members of one expedition murdered, those of another fighting for their lives, and our solar system on the brink of civil war, can the Doctor, Ace and Benny survive a journey to the heart of the artefact in their search for the truth? There we go, that's how we've set the scene up for you. So, as we do now at this time, let's pause briefly, and we're going to bring you the Doctor Who magazine prelude to this story. This was slightly shorter than usual. It was a one-pager, rather than the usual 2, which were published at the time. And to read it for us, here is Stevie Day.
It begins in silence, with nothing. Not matter, not energy, not time, not feelings or intelligence. Nothing. Then, in the immeasurable small fraction between what had been and what would be, a change. Something new. A birth. The birth of everything. Chaos becomes ordered. Elements are born. Hydrogen changes to helium. Microwaves burst out, attain a smooth configuration. The universe is born. Energy changes into matter. Gravity is born. Matter accretes into lumps. The lumps grow. With matter and energy comes change. Time is born. Time defines the infant universe. And memory defines time. We were born 5,000 million years ago. The lumps grow, attain form, heliases. Life is born. I have lived so long and moved so much and held so many thoughts. I find it difficult to remember whether the universe or myself happened first. Life grows, spreads out amongst the smooth microwaves, the infant matter and energy. Still, What's a few particles of blank time between friends? Life reaches out to itself, to the infant universe, still perfectly ordered and smooth. Energy was like a brightly colored toy to us. We moved it around, shaped with it, played with it. Energy brightens around life, darkens in the new spaces between. Energy accretes to life and forms into dense matter. The universe is no longer a smooth energy state. Galaxies are born. And then I got tired. The galaxies grow and change. Suns form, then planets. The dark spaces between life are wider now and lacking in energy, but the bright galaxies of matter are warm and inviting. The universe was getting cold in places now. All the energy had been moved around, so I wrapped myself up in something warm and waited. Soon I would give birth. And then I would die. In the meantime, I would sleep. While life sleeps, life is born. The Gallifreyan awoke screaming from the first nightmare anyone of his race had experienced. The first vision. Not yet master of his own mind or body, the Gallifreyan wept, for his vision was unique. He had discovered God, and God terrified him. To overcome his fear, the Gallifreyan would do anything, dare anything. He would learn, he would build. Ultimately, he would destroy. To conquer his own fear, the Gallifreyan would conquer all that was possible: matter, energy, time. Only afterwards would he wonder if the thoughts, the memories of his vision had been real, or if he had simply imposed his own insecurities upon a simple moment of scientific genius. Revelation or self-delusion? The answer had to exist. Life had to exist. He would leave his home and look for it. He would find it, if it took him the rest of his lives. I'm not sure about that reading, Kenny. I hope that's what you want. That's my interpretation of the prelude. That's how I read it. That's how I saw it. That's how I imagined it. No AI involved. Hope it's okay.
Thank you so much, Stevie. And of course, he'll be back later on with a second reading, this time from the actual book itself. Now, I have been in touch with author Jim Mortimore, and he kindly agreed to take some questions, and we've had them read out for us. However, there's a couple of other interviews which we will come to first before we get to Jim's all-new chat with the Power of Three. We're going to kick off with Jim's interview with Doctor Who magazine. This appeared in one of Craig Hinton's interviews, Writing New Who. This featured in issue 222, and Jim's words are read for us by Craig Brawley.
After Lucifer Rising and Blood Heat, Jim Mortimore has written Parasite, his latest new adventure. It began 2 years ago. Andy Lane and Liz Halliday wanted to start up a science fiction magazine and asked me to do the cover. I painted a 12 million miles wide fossilized ammonite in space, with a nearby space station and lots of 2001 type shuttles, an amazing stories style cover. As it turned out, the magazine never happened, but I knew that I had to write about that image. I then started thinking about the type of story I wanted to write, and thought back to the books that I'd read in my childhood, such as Rendezvous with Rama. Books like that are a science fiction voyage of discovery, where the characters are in an environment where neither they nor the readers know what's happening, and I decided that if I was going to rip off somebody, I'd rip off the best. So I chatted to Paul Leonard, author of Venusian Lullaby, and developed a comic strip treatment for it, and then all of that was put on hold for Blood Heat. I was recycling ideas for my next proposal and incorporated Parasite into a historical story with Alexandria in it. This all became far too complicated, so I split it into 2 books, one of which was crushed down and became Book of Shadows in Decalogue, and the other became Parasite. Virgin liked the idea of the artifact, but asked me if I could put a baddie in it. Now, having a baddie provides a viewpoint in opposition to the good guys, but there wasn't any plot left over for the bad guy to do. But once I'd included him, I realised that it enabled me to clarify the moral voice, especially where the Doctor was concerned, and to make sure that all the people who thought that they'd got it right, got it wrong. An alternative resolution, if you like. On the other hand, I liked the original plot, and did have to change it quite a lot. The book suffered, and I suffered. I didn't enjoy writing Parasite. I put off the writing under the pretext of doing research on parasites, and then a Cracker novelisation cropped up. I shelved Parasite and did Cracker. That seemed like a good idea. However, towards the end of writing the Cracker book, I was looking forward to the change when I returned to Parasite, but when I did return to it, I didn't like it. Parasite needed an awful lot of editing. For example, what had been the prelude for DWM became the prologue of the book, because I thought it was very poignant discovering what had happened to the real Mark Bannon, as opposed to the similarity in Lucifer Rising. And I also discovered that my writing style had changed since I had got into the different prose style for Cracker. At the end of the day, I decided to get whatever enjoyment I could get out of Parasite and deliberately experimented with different voices, such as Arthur C. Clarke and Jimmy McGovern, creator of Cracker. But at the end of the day, writing Cracker was like eating ice cream, and Parasite was like eating the final biological result. So what would Jim have changed to make Parasite more enjoyable to write? The whole thing. I'd remove the villain and rewrite the ending a little, setting up a tiny part of the artifact's lifestyle so that the Doctor could resolve the problem with Ace in a way that was more internally consistent. And I'd also change the cover. I was asked to describe a scene, so I handed over pages of description, precise instructions for what I thought was a really good cover. And when I saw the initial sketch, it was pretty close to my mental image. I had envisaged something like the special effects sequences from The Abyss, very cluttered, very dark, with lots of bioluminescent creatures floating about. But the finished result was far too bright. Then again, to be fair to the artist, it all boils down to the difference between my ideas and the interpretation of the prose description. All in all, Parasite was a hard book to conceptualise. All of the grandeur and the embellishments came from long talks with Paul Leonard. I would say what I wanted and Paul would work out how I could do it. But the hardest part of the book was making the editorial changes that were required so Virgin would buy it. It was very sorted out in my own mind. The outline was 10,000 words long and very detailed, even down to examples of dialogue to illustrate characterisation, and I thought the way that it worked was obvious. I suppose it could have worked better with the changes, but I just didn't want to write it that way. My arrogance, I suppose. So what's in store for the future? Definitely another Cracker book and another new adventure. This one is called Eye of Heaven. It's a straight historical story with an Indiana Jones feel to it, set in the 1860s. Lots of excitement. The TARDIS gets a cannonball right through the time rotor, and a companion is seriously wounded, and it ends on a cliffhanger. It's the first part of a 2-part storyline that concludes with Paul Leonard's Conjunction, which comes out the following month.
Jim later spoke about Parasite when he was interviewed for Bernice Summerfield, The Inside Story. And courtesy of our good friend Simon Guerrier, he's provided the full text of Jim's interview. And again, this is read for us by Craig Brawley.
The final new adventure of 1994 saw the return of Jim Mortimore. Parasite was my first opportunity to knock up a bit of genuine Arthur C. Clarke style world building, he says. I was directly inspired by his novels Rendezvous with Rama and A Fall of Moondust, which I first read at age 5, believe it or not. My normal criteria for reviewing, characterisation and plot, don't really apply, wrote Craig Hinton in DWM 221, 18th of January 1995. It falls into the category of science fiction books known as an artifact novel, and people and plots take second place to the sheer magnificence and wonder of the alien environment. It's a brutal story too, as I Who, the unauthorised guide to Doctor Who novels, puts it. Bernice gets a hairline fracture of the skull, so Mark Bannon drills into her head to relieve the pressure. She also gestates a parasite, so Ace injects Benny with poison to make the creature form a cyst, then removes it. Benny's leg gets a compound fracture and she burns with fever. My only complaint, Hinton's review continued, is the offhand manner in which the horrific things which have happened to the Doctor, Ace and Benny are dismissed at the end. Both companions are suffering from something quite unpleasant, and the Doctor has just been shot through the heart. But do we even get a paragraph of well-earned angst? Nope, it's just back to the TARDIS and off we go. Mortimore admits now that it wanders off the beaten track from time to time. It also suffers, he says, from a book-sized interruption called Cracker, Mad Woman in the Attic, another of Virgin's novel ranges. But in most respects, I'm pretty pleased with it, Mortimore concludes. Especially Benny's part. I like Benny when she's in a mad place. As an indie clone, she really shines at those times. Actually, Mortimore says, Parasite is a book I'm very happy with on many levels. I was highly excited about it at the time and enthused about it madly to then series editor Rebecca Levine before I pitched it to her. She only bought it after considerable effort on my part though, which I was both surprised and disappointed by. On the other hand, she did finally let me persuade her, thanks Bex, to part with some of Virgin's hard-won cash.
And now we're going to hear an original interview with Jim just for this podcast. And I started by asking him, what did you learn from writing your first two novels that you took into this one, your third?
Pretty much nothing. Parasite was a big old experiment, me trying stuff I hadn't done before. Bex wasn't really sure. Didn't get the pitch, I think, but she trusted me, bless her, and let me go with it. Respect for that.
Do you remember what you pitched to Virgin in terms of Parasite?
Yeah, it was a remodeled idea I'd had for a comic that I couldn't figure an ending for. I kept the characters, added the Doctor, Ace and Benny. That let me devise an ending the original idea would never have achieved.
How do you get inside the head, well, okay, the psyche, of completely alien beings?
Honestly, I just kind of make stuff up until something sticks, then build on that.
This book is dark and violent and disturbing. Did you like creating that feeling in readers who found it an uncomfortable read in places?
It didn't strike me as dark and violent. It was experimental. I do remember wanting to try a concept sci-fi, a book where the idea was very thoroughly explored, permeating everything from story to structure to landscape to characters. Parasitism was the theme. It could have gone much worse. Look at Alien.
How difficult is it to create beings with whom we, as readers, can emotionally engage when they are so different from ourselves?
I didn't even think of that. I had my big idea, and getting that out was what occupied me. Generally speaking, I don't try to make the characters engaging. I just don't think that way. They're not characters, they're real people, in my head anyway, and I just try to make their responses to the story believable. I think everyone's emotional connection to characters is different. I can't second guess that, so I don't generally bother.
Parasite links back to your first novel, Lucifer Rising, with the character of Mark Bannon tying in with his dad Alex. Was that the emotional hook you liked engaging with?
No. I believe someone may have wanted a villain. I might be misremembering. Bannon seemed like a sympathetic choice. I didn't want a villain. The story didn't need one, in the same way that Clark's Rendezvous with Rama doesn't have a villain. Well, it has a tagged-on one for a few pages, but it doesn't need it. It's a book of exploration. Look, as a reader, you're either a journey guy or a destination gal. I'm a journey guy. For me, the journey is the destination. No villain necessary. I once heard someone famous say, and I'm paraphrasing here, your story should be the most important thing that ever happens to your main character. I would emphasize the distinction. Story, not villain.
What would you most like to be asked about this book that I haven't asked you about yet?
I remember Virgin was sufficiently impressed by my cracker submission for To Say I Love You that they interrupted the writing schedule for Parasite to incorporate it. I don't have a copy of that submission anymore, by the way. If anyone out there has a copy of it, I would love a copy back.
More than 30 years have passed now since you wrote Parasite, so how do you look back on it now?
Yeah, all good. Weird, experimental, icky, I guess. Boy interrupted.
Fantastic stuff. So huge thanks to Jim for taking the time to reply to those questions, and of course to the fantastic Craig for reading them out for us. and bringing Jim's replies to life. So, let's have our second reading from the book and hand back to Stevie Day.
Gale thumped the nearby wreckage in frustration. If only the doctor was here!
But he isn't.
A whisper of speech came then from Midnight.
When the doctor took my memories, I gained some of his. I've been thinking.
Gale looked at Midnight, felt hope blooming inside.
I have an idea.
Go on. The words came slowly and with many hesitations. It was obvious Midnight's power of human speech was fading quickly as his change progressed.
Perhaps the artifact itself can be made to tailor
He hesitated.
Intelligent, no, smart molecule, which, when introduced into their bodies, will automatically bond with the damaged receptors and thus repair them.
It sounds pretty far-fetched to me, Gale said. How do you know it'll work?
I don't. The idea is attributable to the part of me that was once the doctor. There's no evidence to suggest it would work either way. Just the idea.
Great. Gale frowned. She looked at Bannon. He remained quiet. She thought for a moment. A kilometre away, a section of forest drifted past, heading for the inner chamber wall and the chasm there. Gale studied the section of jungle as she thought. The foliage was black, only the tiniest glimmer of light to indicate scale and distance. With a shock, Gale realised it was dying, the first hint of death on this scale she had seen in the artifact. All right, she said, we'll try it. We've got nothing to lose, and neither have Ace and Drew. She looked at Midnight. What's your plan? Bannon added, what about Bernice? Midnight's reply was not exactly surprising.
She holds life inside her. If she could speak, she would say she wants this birth.
Gale sighed. Of course she will. Now that's because the parasite inside her is using pheromones to alter her behaviour so it'll be able to emerge under the right conditions to continue its life cycle. There was a long pause. Somewhere in the distance came a long boom like distant thunder, followed by a gargantuan cracking sound. Gale imagined huge trees falling in 100-kilometre wide sections from the rim to drift through the chamber before disintegrating or being sucked into the vast maw ahead of them. Finally, Midnight spoke again.
The monkeys speak of a cure for the water death. A cure they never use because when infected, they no longer desire to be cured.
What is it? Gale insisted.
The fungus, when it is a particular species.
Now Bannon looked up. His face creased with concern as Midnight went on, hesitating over exactly the right words to use.
It's the fungus which introduces changes into the artifact's environment.
Midnight began to speak more rapidly now, as if used to human speech, and the access to the doctor's memories within him had temporarily halted his changes once more.
It's a kind of smart molecule itself, acting as normalizing agents. If things get outside of the artifact's parameters, that's why it's always changing species. It dictates the state of the ecosystem.
Midnight paused, as if for thought, then added,
If we introduce that into Ace, Drew and Bernice, it should seek out and repair the damage. Their bodies should read it as the one thing they need most of it, and thus actively help it to get there.
Bannon said nothing, merely listened, pursing his lips thoughtfully. Gale shot a surprised look in his direction.
Another piece of information. You might have blown up the members of that expedition for processing.
Bannon looked away, unwilling to meet Gale's frank gaze. Gale was looking at him, so didn't see the odd shiver run through Midnight's body. It was as if her words had dredged up an old memory, an old, angry memory. Bannon looked round then. Take the info pack with you when you go, he said to Gale. That way you can be sure of bringing back the right species. I beg your pardon, Gale said indignantly. You're assuming rather a lot, aren't you? Take the raft. Ask one of the monkeys to pilot you. At Gale's look, Bannerman pointed at the section of jungle drifting a kilometre away or so from the city. The fungus lives on the trees. Those are the nearest trees. Gale narrowed her eyes suspiciously. And what will you be doing while I'm gone? Bannon's face remained carefully neutral. The same as everyone else, he said. Trying to stay alive.
And thanks again for that, Stevie. Now, as we always do, we look at the review from Doctor Who magazine to hear what they thought at the time, and the reviewer of this book was Craig Hinton. Craig said, "Cut off from the expanding Earth Empire, the colony of Elysium has a mysterious tourist attraction to keep its mind off the ever-present threat of civil war. The Artifact, a huge ammonite in space. A scientific team from Elysium investigates the interior of the first chamber of the Artifact, a region of bizarre vegetation and hostile life forms which defy all analysis. But the Artifact is not just mysterious, it is also very deadly. Shortly after the science team is destroyed, the TARDIS materialises, and Benny almost becomes the main course for one of the less pleasant inhabitants. Before long, all three travellers discover that the Artifact is immeasurably more dangerous than they could have possibly imagined. Unless they can solve the puzzle, Elysium will be destroyed, and the whole galaxy will learn a new meaning for the word parasite. Parasite, ISBN 0426 204 255, is the latest work from the talented pen of Jim Mortimore. After all the critical praise heaped on his previous Blood Heat, I approached Parasite with an open mind, and I was rewarded with a first-rate science fiction novel. My normal criteria for reviewing, characterisation and plot, don't really apply to a book like Parasite. It falls into that category of science fiction books known as an artifact novel, and people and plots take second place to the sheer magnificence and wonder of the alien environment. Parasite, like Arthur C. Clarke's Rama series or Greg Bear's Eon and Eternity, hinges upon the author's abilities to create a convincing yet outlandish backdrop, and Jim has done exactly that. Having said that, the people trapped in the artifact are also well drawn and mostly sympathetic. The no longer human Midnight, the possessed Rhiannon, the epileptic Drew, all of them act out their parts with conviction. The only character that fails is Mark Bannon, the so-called villain of the piece. If the name is familiar, it's because his father, Alex Bannon, was the misguided scientist in Jim and Andy Lane's first book, Lucifer Rising. His son is a threadbare carbon copy, exhibiting a psychosis that is about as interesting as an episode of Neighbours. This book didn't really need a villain. The artifact serves that purpose perfectly, and he only seems to be present to anthropomorphise the danger. I suspect that Virgin insists on there being a recognisable enemy, but Parasite is one book that really doesn't need one. The plot is really the life cycle of the artifact. As the book progresses, the characters start piecing together the clues and realise what they are witnessing. Jim has a far better hold on the pacing of this one than Blood Heat, and the result is a novel which steadily increases in tension until the climax hurtles toward you like an express train. Sadly, the train then stops before it reaches the station, since my only complaint is the offhand manner in which the horrific things which have happened to the Doctor, Ace and Benny are dismissed at the end. Both companions are suffering from something quite unpleasant, and the Doctor has just been shot through the heart. But do we even get a paragraph of well-earned angst? Nope, it's just back to the TARDIS and off we go. But these are churlish quibbles. Parasite is an excellent example of a science fiction novel set in the Doctor Who universe. If you liked Lucifer Rising, you'll love Parasite. Pros: the alien environment, Ace and Benny, the regeneration. Cons: the dismissive ending. Verdict: 4 stars. So there we have it. Craig was definitely a fan of this one, despite his minor quibbles. So that's what the official Doctor Who magazine review said. But what do you, the readers, think of the book? Let's turn to Goodreads and find out. Parasite has a rating of 3.07. It's had 167 ratings, and there are 20 reviews. Of these, 5 stars are 11%, 4 stars 20%, 3 stars 39%, 2 stars 16%, and 1 star 10%. Let's start with a 5-star review. Samantha says, Parasite is one of my favourite stories within the novel ranges of Doctor Who. It is primarily a story about change. Unstoppable, vicious and violent change. The world drawn up in Mortimer's artefact is a magnificent unreal place, and the sheer alien quality at the onset of the story is wild enough before the entire place and the unlucky few who have chosen to visit it are engulfed by the birth of something new within it. If you are a die-hard Doctor Who fan, we don't use the W word here, I highly recommend this and Mortimer's few other stories for the series. If you're new to the Whoniverse, then it's best to read the novels in their published order, as you will face certain previously lame continuities. 4-star review from Andy Stair. I love it when the Doctor Who books go really big and use concepts that the TV show could never have done. Parasite is that. I'd almost like to read a spin-off about what happened in the millions of years in the future, described at the end. 3 stars from Daniel Kukwa. It makes for compelling reading, but this is not a book for the timid. It plays in a world of nauseous ugliness, violence and brutality in all its forms, and it can become exhausting at times. I'm beginning to think that, after reading all of Jim Mortimer's Doctor Who novels, the author simply isn't capable of telling a story that doesn't delve into the dark hearts of men's souls. That's good or bad, depending on your mood. 3 stars from Michel Siskoid Albert, or Albert. I'm just guessing that Michel Albert sounds French. Jim Mortimer's best quality as a Doctor Who writer? No, I'm not going to do that. Jim Mortimer's best quality as a Doctor Who writer is world building, and like Lucifer Rising and Blood Heat, Parasite creates an intense and involved world. This one a giant cosmic artefact of null grey atmosphere, strange creatures and ball-like oceans. I'm not sure it is quite as good a story as those first 2 books though. Everything is really in service of the high concept world, and it has the character arc, more so than any human or humanish character. And while I like a scientific mystery as much as the next guy, and Mortimer does as good a job as he can in describing this totally alien environment, that's still a weakness. And the whole anti-grav thing means there's an awful lot of collision action, and characters very often drift away, drift into one another in different combinations, and it's to the point where I was always going, oh, okay, I guess that person is there, not there. Given how big the artefact is, this seems even stranger. I liked Parasite well enough, but it's a little bit like a long encyclopedia entry. There's a 1-star review from Danny Welch though. Finding themselves in a world where gravity is complex and unique, the Doctor and his companions must fight for survival in a world where parasites breed. One man knows all the answers, but he will kill if anyone else finds out. This story started so well, good characters, intriguing ideas and bleakness. But in the second half of this novel, it becomes so dark it is unforgiving. The TARDIS crew, apart from the Doctor, become extremely out of character, committing questionable things, and the story becomes a horrific and tiring bloodbath. I get the story was all about change, but honestly, I felt how it was handled was poor. The ending also made this story for me so pointless as well, since the Doctor and his companions leave without changing things for the better. I love my dark and edgy stories, but this is too much. Disgusting and vile. Definitely not Jim Mortimer's best story. If you like overly violent stories, this may be for you, but those of the squeamish, stay as far away from this novel as possible. Thank you, Danny. Evidently not a fan. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, you can follow us on social media. We are at Power of 3 Pod on Twitter with a number 3. We are at Finished Zine on Blue Sky, and we have a Facebook group too, where you'll be able to have a look at the DWM Prelude page. And if you have enjoyed it, please feel free to leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts from, because they're always appreciated and will help more people to find us. So there we go. We're going to leave you with a song now. And there are quite a few songs called Parasite, but to be honest, I couldn't find any I particularly liked. So instead, we're going to go with one that ties in, given that this mentions the planet Elysium. Pet Shop Boys had an album called Elysium, and one of the tracks on that was called Memory of the Future. So we're going to go with that, because this story is set in the future after all. Until next time, I've been Kenny Smith. We'll see you soon. Bye bye.